Joe Manchin has been saying we don't need to get rid of the filibuster because there's good Republicans and they will, set aside their overriding strategy of trying to stop anything good from happening and trying to consign Joe Biden to the waste bin of history after just a few months. They'll set all that aside and they will join us to do things like pass some sort of voting rights bill, not the For the People Act, which he doesn't support in its current form, although we're gonna talk about what he might support, but they'll come and do something. Well, Senator Mitch McConnell, now minority leader for the Republicans, decided, you know what, as convenient to us as this time-wasting bipartisanship is, I would prefer to make Joe Manchin look like an idiot, so I'm gonna throw him under the bus, and he did. He announced over the last day that the For the People Act and Manchin's proposed alternative are equally unacceptable and totally inappropriate, which is amazing because there is a pretty good distance between the For the People Act and what Manchin would approve of. They're equally unacceptable. So he doesn't even care, Joe Manchin, about your ideas. And we're gonna have more from him attacking Joe Manchin. But before we launch into our commentary, I wanna let you know, in case you didn't see the show yesterday, some of what Manchin supports as a possible compromise bill, because if you're gonna compromise on anything, it should be democracy. And what he doesn't support. So here's what he supports: a public election holiday. That's good. I've considered that common sense for literally years. 15 days of early voting, including 2 weekends of early voting. Computer models replacing partisan gerrymandering, potentially the biggest thing in that compromise now. Automatic registration, but through the DMV, not like truly automatic registration for everyone. You would have to be in the DMV system. So that would include most people, but not everyone, so bear that in mind. Some new campaign finance disclosures, but not everything that was initially in the For the People Act. Requires voter ID, that's great, and continued voter purges, which we know Republicans love. So you don't get a public campaign financing system, you don't get true automatic voter registration, you don't get universal vote by mail, you don't get a good bit of the ethics stuff and the campaign finance stuff and a whole bunch of other stuff. But Jordan, what do you think so far about what President Manchin will allow?
Oh, it's a perfect example. This whole scenario is a perfect example of why it's just meaningless to even try for bipartisanship right now. We are in a moment with a closing window of opportunity to do anything. Time is running out because after summer they're going to be focused on midterms, and who knows what that's going to look like after those elections. So we're running out of time to do literally anything, and that this, which you point out, this kind of sucks compared to the For the People Act. I mean, there's some good things, but I mean, voter ID laws, a system that where people rely on the DMV and all the issues related to that, to accessibility, to location, to distance people have to travel, to all these different hurdles they have to jump through, even get an ID. Just feeding into a voter ID system, which is already something that Republicans benefit from because it disproportionately impacts poor and black and brown voters. This is a system that would just continue the status quo with a few mealy-mouthed gifts to the left, and even that they don't want. Think back to when Obama was president. This famous Tortilla Coast meeting with Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. I think Eric Cantor was there. And John Boehner, a few other key House and Senate Republicans, and they said, look, Obama's gonna be a one-term president. Nothing he wants is getting through, that's it. And they obstructed every step of the way for both terms. Why are we now to think that Republicans, even if there are a few good Republicans in the back benches, why are we going to think now that McConnell, who ultimately runs the Senate, is not going to is going to change on that past stance? There's no way they're going to give Biden a gift. This is a contentious midterm and an even tougher re-election campaign in 2024. They're not going to give him anything. They want him to run on the COVID response, and that's it. So if that's enough, sure, that might help Democrats, but they're not going to give him anything, even what is ultimately a compromise.
Yeah, and they would have stopped him from running even on the COVID relief if they could have. They unfortunately failed because of reconciliation. Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, look, trying to work. We know that Manchin's lying, by the way. Like Jordan and I are not having a serious conversation about oh God, we have to convince him of the merits of nothing. He's lying, but democracy needs to be defended. We all seem to agree on that outside the Republicans. From who? The Republicans. Why are we gonna involve them in the process? They're the ones that are destroying it. So yeah, that's obviously insane. I might have a slightly different view of this on some parts. Obviously, the inclusion of the voter purges, requiring the voter ID, it is right-wing garbage. Not to say that only right-wingers have ever supported it, but it's generally right-wing garbage that, as I pointed out earlier this week on the Damage Report, they couldn't get it under Republicans. Trump didn't pass national voter ID. So now under Democrats, we get national voter ID. That's insane and would make accepting this compromise quite distasteful. That said, there is good stuff in it. It's insane that it's up to one senator from West Virginia whether we get this stuff. Like, let's just stop and acknowledge that. It's madness. The nation, which is largely not in West Virginia, voted for Democrats in 2018 to take over the House, gave them the Senate and the presidency. Joe Manchin is such a small part of all of that. The idea that he would be responsible for all of it is annoying. But that said, getting rid of gerrymandering is not a small thing. A public election holiday would be great, especially for the working class that has a much harder time getting away to actually vote. The guaranteed 2 weeks of early voting would be fairly significant. And by the way, requiring 2 weekends of it means that it would fight back against some of this attempt by the Republicans to destroy the souls to the polls efforts. So largely trying to stop like Black Christian voters from their voter drives. Some of the campaign finance stuff, blah, 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 is good. Now, it's just, you got those poison pills, Jordan, but like getting rid of gerrymandering, that's fairly huge. We don't know the system they replace it with might have some issues too, by the way, but at least for now, that's something.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.